The storm came early that evening over Savannah, Georgia, rolling in from the Atlantic like a bruise across the sky. The rain turned the cobblestones of River Street into mirrors, slick with reflections of old gas lamps and the low, honey glow of bar windows. By the time Clara Monroe stepped out of the florist shop she managed, the air was thick with electricity, humid, restless, and heavy with the kind of silence that comes before something shatters. She locked the door behind her, pressing her forehead briefly against the cool glass. The faint scent of lilacs still clung to her hands. Lilacs, her fiancé's favorite, or had been. It had been 11 months since Ethan Hale died on Highway 80, just outside the city limits. His car had been hit head-on by a black pickup that crossed the median. The other driver, Luke Mercer, had walked away with a broken arm and a deep scar across his cheek. Luke Mercer, Savannah's prodigal son, the one who'd left town at 18 to join the Marines, the one every girl in high school whispered about, the one Ethan had once called his best friend. Clara hadn't seen him since the funeral. Until tonight. The rain started again as she crossed the narrow street toward her car, wind whipping her dark hair into her face. A truck engine rumbled somewhere nearby, low and steady. When she looked up, headlights cut through the mist and stopped directly in front of her. The black pickup, the same one. Her heart seized. Luke stepped out of the driver's side, his figure backlit by the storm. Taller than she remembered, his broad shoulders carried the weight of a man who had seen too much. The rain slicked down his jacket, the scar on his face pale under the streetlight. "Clara," he said. His voice was lower than she remembered, roughened like gravel dragged over stone. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "You shouldn't be here. I needed to see you." There's nothing left to say. He took a step forward, the rain pooling around his boots. There's everything left to say. Clara's fingers tightened around her keys. "You killed him, Luke. You killed the man I was supposed to marry." He flinched, barely, but it was enough. The silence between them cracked, letting the sound of the rain rush in. "I never meant." "Don't." Her voice trembled. "Don't say you didn't mean to. That won't bring him back." He looked down, jaw tight. "You think I don't know that? I relive it every night." She turned away, fumbling for a car door, but his hand shot out, catching her wrist. Not hard, but enough to stop her. The contact burned through her. She froze. "Let me go," she whispered. "Please, just listen." For a moment, neither moved. The air was thick with the smell of rain and exhaust, the faint metallic tang of lightning in the distance. When she finally met his eyes, something in them stopped her, something raw and desperate. "I came back because I found something," he said quietly. "Something you need to see. I don't want anything from you. You'll want this." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, rain-speckled and creased at the edges. Her name was written across it, Clara Monroe, in Ethan's handwriting. Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "It was in the wreckage. The sheriff's office missed it. I found it when they released the car." She hesitated, her pulse hammering in her throat. "Why would you have his car?" "Because it wasn't an accident." His voice was steady, too steady. "Someone tampered with it, and I think whoever did wanted him dead." The rain seemed to still for a moment, the world holding its breath. Clara stared at him, disbelief fighting against the old instinct that told her Luke Mercer had never been a liar. But he'd killed Ethan. How could both things be true? "You're insane," she said, though her voice was barely more than air. He stepped closer, his body radiating heat against the damp night. "I can prove it, but I need your help." She laughed, bitter, hollow. "You want my help? You should be in prison." He looked at her then with something like pain, or maybe longing. "I should be, but I'm not, because I didn't kill him." The thunder cracked above them, sudden and violent. Clara stepped back, clutching the envelope like a wound. "Read it," Luke said. "Then decide if you still want me gone." He turned and walked away, his boots echoing on the wet cobblestones until the sound disappeared beneath the storm. Clara stood there long after he was gone, her heartbeat still tangled with the memory of his voice. The envelope trembled in her hands. Her fingers were numb as she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, smudged with water and time. Ethan's handwriting looped across the page, hurried, uneven. Clara, if anything happens to me before the wedding, don't believe what they tell you. Luke is not your enemy. He's trying to protect you. The rain washed the rest of the ink away. Clara's knees gave out, and she sank onto the curb. The letter pressed to her chest as lightning lit the Savannah River in white fire. Somewhere in the distance, the black pickup's engine started again. She looked up through the storm, the truth burning in her throat. Luke Mercer hadn't come back for forgiveness. He'd come back for her, and he wasn't leaving without her. The next morning broke in shades of gray. Savannah's air was heavy with fog, softening the outlines of the oaks and their swaying moss like ghosts caught mid-breath. Clara woke to the low moan of a tugboat on the river, her sheets tangled around her legs and her chest still tight from the night before. The letter lay on her nightstand, edges curled, ink faintly bleeding from where the rain had touched it. She'd read it a dozen times since coming home, each word dragging her deeper into a confusion that wouldn't loosen its grip. Luke is not your enemy. He's trying to protect you. Protect her from what? She made coffee and stood barefoot in her small kitchen, staring through the misted window at the courtyard below. The world felt quieter than usual, cautious. She caught her own reflection in the glass, eyes rimmed red, a faint tremor in her hand, and hated that somewhere beneath the grief and anger there was curiosity. When her phone buzzed, she jumped. Unknown number. Meet me at Forsyth Park. Noon. By the fountain. I'll explain everything. No signature. But she didn't need one. By noon the fog had lifted, leaving the sky pale and stretched thin over the park's green expanse. Families strolled under the live oaks, children fed pigeons, and the fountain's white spray caught the sunlight like scattered glass. Clara waited on a bench, her heart in a rhythm she couldn't calm. Then she saw him. Luke. He wore a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the faint outline of old tattoos visible beneath his skin. The scar on his cheek caught the light as he walked toward her, his expression unreadable. You came, he said quietly, against my better judgment. He almost smiled, but didn't. That's fair. She crossed her arms. You said you could prove Ethan's death wasn't an accident. Start talking. He sat beside her, keeping a careful distance. 3 months before the crash, Ethan was working on something to do with a company called Haverly Dynamics. You ever hear of them? She frowned. No. They own a string of development projects around Savannah. He was managing one of them, until he found out they were using the land deal to launder money through fake construction bids. He was planning to go public. Clara blinked, trying to reconcile the image of her fiancé, the man who collected seashells, who hated confrontation, with someone uncovering corporate crime. You're saying he was killed because of that? Luke nodded slowly. He called me the night before the crash. Said he thought he was being followed. Told me he left something for you in case anything happened. The letter, she whispered. Yeah. He looked at her, eyes dark and unwavering. He trusted me to protect you. That's why I came back. Clara shook her head. No, that doesn't make sense. The police investigated the crash. They said you crossed the line. I didn't, he said, voice firm. Someone tampered with his brakes before he ever left town. I lost control when I tried to swerve. The sheriff's report didn't match the black box data from the car, but they buried it. She studied him. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke, but his eyes didn't flinch. Why would the sheriff hide that? Because Haverly Dynamics owns half the city. The sound of the fountain filled the silence between them. You're asking me to believe a lot, she said. I know. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But I can prove it. Ethan saved the file somewhere. If we find them, we'll know who did it. Clara's throat tightened. The weight of Ethan's name felt heavier now, like he was still somewhere close, watching, waiting for her to decide whether she would follow the trail he'd left behind. Luke looked at her. He left you the key. Her eyes flicked up. What? The letter. Look at the envelope again. She pulled it from her bag, the paper soft from handling. He pointed to the flap, where the glue had peeled slightly. Inside, hidden under the fold, was a small metal key attached to a tag with faded handwriting. Locker 218, riverfront storage. Clara stared at it, disbelief flooding her. You knew this was here? I guessed. Ethan always hid things in plain sight. The wind picked up, rustling the moss above them. Clara felt her pulse quicken. If what you're saying is true, whoever killed him won't want us anywhere near that locker. Luke's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then we better move fast. Riverfront storage sat on the edge of town, behind an old freight yard near the river. Rows of corrugated metal units stretched into the distance, their paint peeling, numbers fading under years of salt and rain. Clara parked her car beside Luke's truck. Her stomach churned as she held the key between her fingers, its metal cold against her skin. You sure about this? He asked. No, she admitted. But if there's even a chance Ethan was murdered, she swallowed. Then I have to know. He nodded once. Stay close. They walked through the narrow corridor between storage units, their footsteps echoing off metal walls. Somewhere far off, a train horn moaned. The air smelled like rust and river water. Locker 218 was at the far end. The padlock hung waiting. Clara slid the key into place. It turned with a soft click. When she lifted the door, the smell of dust and oil hit her. Inside, a tarp covered what looked like boxes and an old metal cabinet. Luke pulled the tarp back. Underneath were 3 cardboard boxes labeled with Ethan's handwriting. Project Ledbetter, personal copies. He exhaled. This is it. Clara crouched, opening the top box. Inside were folders, flash drives, and photos of construction sites. Half-built condominiums and blueprints marked with notes. One photograph caught her attention. Ethan standing in front of a building site, arm around a man she didn't recognize. The man wore a suit, but his face... Wait, she said softly. That's... the mayor, Luke finished. The blood drained from her face. Before she could speak, a noise came from outside. The sharp crunch of gravel under boots. Luke's head snapped up. He motioned for silence. Clara's breath froze in her lungs as the sound grew closer. She saw a shadow move across the sunlight, slipping through the gaps in the door. Then, the handle turned. Luke shoved the boxes aside and grabbed her hand, pulling her into the corner behind the cabinet, just as the door creaked open. A man stepped inside. Broad shoulders, pressed shirt, gun at his hip. He moved with the ease of someone who didn't expect to be caught. Through the sliver between the cabinet and wall, Clara saw his face. Sheriff Dale Cawley. Her chest tightened. He'd been at Ethan's funeral. He'd hugged her mother. He'd told her it was an accident. The sheriff scanned the room, muttering under his breath. Should have cleaned this place out months ago. He walked to the box Clara had opened, flipped through a folder, then pulled out a small flash drive. Can't leave loose ends. Clara's hand trembled against Luke's. The world shrank to the sound of her heartbeat and the sheriff's footsteps. Then his phone rang. Yeah, he said, voice low. I'm here. No, they haven't found it yet. But if they do, she won't live long enough to use it. Clara's blood went cold. Luke's jaw clenched. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. We have to move. Now. When the sheriff turned toward the door, Luke slipped out behind him, pulling Clara silently after. They ran between the storage units, the gravel crunching underfoot. A shout rang out. Hey! Gunfire tore through the air. Clara ducked, heart pounding. Luke grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a row of dumpsters. The truck was only 30 feet away. Run, he shouted. She sprinted, rain beginning to fall again, thin, sharp drops slicing through the sunlight. They dove into the truck, just as another bullet ricocheted off the side mirror. Luke slammed the door shut, engine roaring to life. As they sped out of the lot, Clara looked back through the window. The sheriff stood in the rain, phone to his ear, watching them go. He wasn't smiling, but someone beside him was, a man stepping out of a black sedan, umbrella tilted low over his face. Clara couldn't see him clearly, but the sight of his hands, his left hand, missing the tip of one finger, made her breath catch. She'd seen that hand before. On Ethan's father. The rain followed them out of Savannah, turning the highway into a silver ribbon that stretched through the low marshlands. The wipers beat in steady rhythm, and the only other sound was the roar of the engine and Clara's uneven breath. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Luke's jaw flexed as he drove, eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. "You saw him too," he said finally. She nodded. "Ethan's father. Richard Hale." The words felt foreign in her mouth. The man had given her his blessing at the engagement dinner. He'd held her hands and told her she was family now. She remembered his cologne, cedar and bourbon, and the quiet grief in his face at the funeral. "Why would he be there?" she whispered. Luke's fingers tightened on the wheel. "Because Ethan must have gotten too close to something he wasn't supposed to find." Clara turned toward him, the rain streaking across the glass. "Are you saying his own father had him killed?" "I don't know," Luke said, "but that's who's been pulling the strings. Haverly Dynamics isn't just a company, it's a shell. Richard Hale sits on its board." The silence between them deepened. The highway wound through the trees, the low country turning into long stretches of pine and swamp. Clara tried to steady her breathing, but the pieces refused to fit. Ethan's laughter, his soft voice in the morning, his father's hand on her shoulder at the graveside. "I can't do this," she said suddenly. "This isn't real. It can't be." Luke pulled over onto the shoulder. The truck idled, the rain drumming against the roof. He turned to her, eyes dark and steady. "Clara, I didn't come back to drag you into danger. But you need to understand, Ethan died trying to protect you, and whoever ordered his death thinks you have what he left behind." Her voice trembled. "And what if he was wrong? What if there's nothing left to find? Then why are they still watching you?" The words hit her like a blow. She thought of the strange call she'd gotten months ago, the unmarked car parked down the street after dark. She told herself it was grief, making her paranoid. Luke reached into his jacket and pulled out the flash drive he'd snatched before they escaped the storage lot. He held it up, water droplets sliding down the metal. "We can find out, but we'll need a computer that isn't traceable." She took a breath, forcing her voice to steady. "I know a place." Clara's late fiancé had always called it the Retreat, a small lake cabin an hour north, near Millen, that belonged to an old family friend. It was where they'd gone to escape the world, to plan the wedding, to talk about forever. Now it felt like trespassing on a ghost. The rain had softened into mist by the time they reached it. Pines towered over the water, their reflections rippling in the pale light. The cabin sat near the edge of the lake, wooden steps slick with moss. Luke parked behind the trees. "Anyone know about this place?" "No one," she said. "Not even my parents." "Good." He scanned the tree line before nodding toward the door. "Then it's as safe as anywhere." Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Clara turned on the old lamp beside the sofa, its yellow glow filling the small room. Ethan's things were still there, the fishing rods, the plaid blanket draped over the armchair, the photograph of the two of them smiling by the lake. Her throat tightened. Luke moved with quiet efficiency, setting up his laptop on the coffee table. He slid the flash drive in. The screen flickered to life. A folder appeared, Project Ledbetter. He opened it. Inside were spreadsheets, financial records, and a set of encrypted documents labeled RDH Private. "RDH," Clara murmured. "Richard Douglas Hale." Luke's fingers stilled. "Exactly." He clicked the file. A password prompt appeared. "Ethan must have encrypted it," Luke said. "He'd only used something personal." Clara's mind raced. She remembered the way Ethan used to hide things in riddles, inside songs, inside memories. She typed in Monroe, then Savannah, then Claire Ethan. Each one flashed access denied. Luke leaned back, frustrated. There has to be a pattern. Something only you'd know. She stared at the keyboard, her pulse thudding in her ears. Then she whispered, "The night he proposed." "What about it?" "He said something, he said. The sky was the same color as the river that day. You'll never forget it." She typed Silver River. The screen blinked, then opened. Inside were dozens of documents, contracts, emails, scanned letters. At the top was one labeled Transfer Authorization, Project Ledbetter. Luke clicked it. As the file loaded, Clara felt her stomach drop. The signature at the bottom wasn't Ethan's. It was Richard Hale's, authorizing payments to the sheriff's office, construction contractors, and one more name she didn't recognize. Lucien K. Mercer. She stared at it. Mercer. Luke's face went pale. That's my father. Clara's heart stopped. He looked away, jaw clenched, as the realization sank in. He's been dead for years. Or at least, that's what I thought. My mother told me he died overseas after deserting the Marines. Luke. But he was already scrolling. Another document appeared, a wire transfer from Haverly Dynamics to Mercer Logistics, dated 2 weeks before Ethan's crash. The note read simply, Containment, Hale Project. Containment, Clara whispered. That means... Silence. Luke's voice cracked. It means they paid him to make sure Ethan never talked. The room went very still. Luke stood, stepping back from the screen, like it might burn him. All this time, I thought I caused that crash. But it wasn't me. My father. He stopped, his voice breaking. He set me up. Clara rose slowly. You didn't know. He laughed once, bitter. Doesn't matter. My name's on that accident report. My face. My hands on the wheel. He looked at her then, eyes glassy with the kind of grief that turns to rage. You should hate me, Clara. You need to. But she didn't. Not anymore. Because beneath the grief and the anger and the ache of everything she'd lost, something new had begun to take root. A fragile, trembling understanding. You came back, she said quietly. You could have run, but you didn't. He met her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of her sleeve. It was a small touch, but it sent a current through her that left her breathless. Clara, he said softly, there's something else. If my father's alive, they'll come for us both. As if summoned by the words, the silence outside shifted. The wind rose, carrying the faint crunch of tires on gravel. Luke moved first, closing the laptop. We need to go. Now. But before they reached the door, headlights flared through the window. A black SUV pulled up the drive, its lights cutting through the rain. Clara's breath caught. How did they find us? Luke's eyes darted toward the corner of the room, to the small security camera half hidden behind the bookshelf, Ethan's old home monitor. The light on it blinked red. Because, Luke said grimly, they were never not watching. The first shot shattered the window. Clara screamed as glass exploded around them. Luke pulled her to the floor, covering her with his body as another bullet tore through the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room except for the flash of lightning outside. He reached for her hand. There's a back door. On my signal run. What about you? He looked at her, rain and glass catching in his hair. If they want me, they'll get me first. Another shot rang out, closer this time. The door rattled. Luke kicked the back door open, rain rushing in. Go. Clara ran into the storm, her shoes slipping in the mud. The trees loomed like black giants around her. Behind her, another gunshot split the air. And then a voice, rough and familiar, carried through the thunder. Enough, Luke. Clara turned, heart stopping as lightning illuminated the yard. A tall man stood beside the SUV, a pistol steady in his hand. His hair gray at the temples, eyes cold and unreadable. Luke froze. Dad. Richard Hale stepped out from behind the man, calm as if he'd just arrived for dinner. Luke, don't make this harder than it already is. Clara's breath hitched. Richard's voice was soft, almost kind. You both should have stayed away. Luke took a step forward, shielding her. You killed your own son. Richard's expression didn't change. Ethan was naive. He didn't understand how the world works. But you were always meant to. Lightning flashed again, bright enough to show the weapon in Luke's father's hand, the same pistol Richard Hale carried. 2 fathers, 2 sons, 2 ghosts still breathing, and between them, her. The thunder swallowed the rest of their words. The last thing Clara remembered before the darkness took her was the smell of gunpowder and rain, and the sound of Luke whispering her name. Clara woke to the sound of rain again, but softer this time, like a whisper against glass. Her vision swam in and out of focus. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, sharp and cold. A steady beeping came from somewhere near her head. When she finally lifted her eyes, she saw white walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and a tube snaking from her arm. A hospital. Panic rushed in all at once. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her ribs. A nurse hurried in, soft-spoken, her accent local. "Miss Monroe, don't move too fast. You've been out for nearly a day." Clara's throat felt raw. Where's Luke Mercer?" The nurse's expression faltered. "The police found you alone, sweetheart, at a cabin near Millen. Said there'd been gunfire, but no one else was there." Clara's pulse spiked. No, he was with me. He was." The nurse touched her shoulder gently. "You should rest. The sheriff will be by soon. He'll explain." She left before Clara could answer. The door closed with a quiet click, leaving her alone with the beeping machine and the echo of thunder outside. She reached for the nightstand, fumbling for her phone, but it was gone. So was her bag. So was the flash drive. The world tilted. Before she could gather her breath, the door opened again. Sheriff Dale Colley stepped in, hat in hand, the same polite smile he'd worn at Ethan's funeral. "Clara," he said softly, "you gave us quite a scare." She forced her voice to stay steady. "Where's Luke?" He sighed, setting his hat on the chair. "Miss Monroe, I think it's time we put this nightmare to rest. Luke Mercer's a dangerous man. He escaped police custody 6 months ago after assaulting a federal officer. He's been lying to you." "That's not true." "I'm afraid it is." His tone stayed calm, almost rehearsed. "We have witnesses who saw him shoot his father last night. He's been off the grid ever since. We're doing everything we can to find him before he hurts anyone else." Clara stared at him, shaking her head. "He didn't shoot anyone. I saw." He cut her off gently. "I know you want to believe that, but trauma can make memory unreliable." Something in his eyes chilled her. Too composed. Too deliberate. "Sheriff," she whispered, "where's Ethan's father?" He paused, then smiled faintly. "Mr. Hale is at home. Safe and sound. He sends his best." Her stomach dropped. "You're lying." "Clara." He took a step closer. "You need to stop digging. This isn't your burden to carry. Go home. Let it go." "I can't." The smile slipped. "Then I'll have to make sure you do." He turned and left, the door closing softly behind him. The storm had passed by the time the night shift nurse came in, humming to herself. When she turned her back to adjust the 4-line, Clara whispered, "Excuse me, could I get a glass of water?" As the nurse left the room, Clara pulled at the 4, wincing as the needle came free. Her hospital gown brushed the floor as she moved to the window. The latch gave easily. Outside, the air was cool, damp with the scent of wet pavement and pine. She climbed out barefoot into the darkness. The parking lot below was nearly empty, just a handful of cars and the distant glow of the security booth. Her body ached, but adrenaline made her weightless. She slipped into the trees beyond the fence. The night swallowed her whole. By dawn, she was miles away, walking barefoot along the back road that led toward the river. Her hospital bracelet was gone. Her hair clung to her face. Somewhere out there, Luke was alive. He had to be. She reached a small gas station on the edge of town and ducked inside. The clerk, a young man with kind eyes, glanced up as she entered. "You all right, miss? Do you have a phone I could use?" He handed her the store's cordless without question. She dialed the only number she could remember, her mother's, but the line went straight to voicemail. She was about to hang up when a familiar voice came from behind her. "You shouldn't have left the hospital." She turned slowly. Richard Hale stood by the refrigerated drinks, dressed in a crisp suit, his expression calm. Too calm. "How did you find you?" He smiled faintly. "You're predictable, Clara. Always running toward the truth instead of away from it." Her voice cracked. "You killed Ethan." He tilted his head. "Killed is such an ugly word. Let's just say, I protected what needed protecting." Her heart pounded. "And Luke?" Richard's eyes glimmered with something unreadable. "Ah, Luke. He's his father's son, always desperate to play the hero. He tried to stop us last night. It didn't end well." She froze. You're lying. Am I? He stepped closer, his cologne, cedar and bourbon, filling her lungs. The thing about Luke Mercer is that he never understood his place. His father did what he was told. Luke didn't. Where is he? Richard leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. Buried in the swamp by now, I imagine. Something inside Clara broke. She swung the phone hard, hitting his shoulder before darting toward the door. Richard caught her wrist mid-motion, grip like iron. "Let me go," she screamed. The clerk looked up, startled. "Hey, sir, what's going on?" Richard smiled at him. "My daughter's had a difficult week." "Don't believe him." Clara shouted. "He's—" Before she could finish, a gunshot cracked through the air. The clerk's eyes went wide. Blood bloomed across his shirt as he fell behind the counter. Richard turned the gun back toward her, calm as ever. "I told you, Clara. Stop digging." Her mind went blank. She stumbled backward, slamming her hand against the fire alarm. The shriek filled the air, shattering the stillness. She ran. The front door burst open, and she sprinted into the morning light, barefoot on asphalt, the alarm still howling behind her. The sound of tires screeched. Another black SUV pulling up fast. Richard shouted, "Don't let her get away." She darted across the field beside the gas station, feet tearing on stones and grass. Ahead, the trees thickened. The smell of the river grew stronger. She reached the edge, just as hands caught her from behind. Strong, rough, familiar. She turned, ready to fight. Luke. He was bleeding from his shoulder, eyes wild, alive. "Come on," he rasped. "We don't have time." She stared at him, disbelief and relief crashing together. "They said you were dead." "I almost was." He pulled her toward the trees. "Your fiancé's father won't stop until we're both gone. But I have something he wants more than us." He reached into his pocket and held up a small silver drive, the twin of the one they'd lost. Clara's mouth fell open. "How?" "Ethan made 2 copies." A shout echoed behind them. Richard's voice, closer now. "Run!" Luke yelled. They tore through the forest, branches slashing at their skin, the river glinting ahead like a strip of light. The sound of footsteps followed, heavy and relentless. They reached the edge of a small wooden bridge, spanning the narrowest part of the river. The water below churned with the runoff from the storm. Luke turned, pistol in hand, eyes locked on the tree line. "Keep moving." But Clara froze. Richard emerged from the woods, his gun raised, face unreadable. "You don't have to die for this," he said. "Give me the drive, Luke. I'll let her go." Luke's grip tightened. "You had your chance." Richard's mouth twitched into something like sorrow. "Then I'll finish what your father couldn't." The world narrowed to the sound of rain and heartbeats. 2 shots rang out. Clara screamed. Richard staggered backward, clutching his chest, and fell into the river. The current took him before the echo of the gunfire faded. Luke dropped the gun, breath ragged, blood seeping through his sleeve. "It's over," he said, voice breaking. Clara caught him as he swayed. "You're hurt." "I've been worse." He tried to smile. "But are you okay?" She nodded through tears. "I thought I lost you." "You almost did." They stood there, rain washing over them, the river carrying away everything that had come before. But somewhere deep inside, Clara knew this wasn't the end. Because as the current turned, something glinted against the rocks. Richard's phone, half submerged but still lit. A single message flashed across the cracked screen. "Incoming transfer confirmed. Phase 2 initiated." Luke followed her gaze. His expression darkened. "What does that mean?" she whispered. He met her eyes, the faint trace of fear behind his exhaustion. "It means this was never just about Ethan." The following dawn over the Georgia marshlands was too quiet, too clean for the blood that had washed into the river the night before. A thin fog coiled through the cypress trees as the first light broke over the water. Luke sat on the hood of the truck, his jacket hanging from one shoulder, a rough bandage around his arm. Clara stood a few feet away, staring at the current where Richard Hale's body had vanished. The surface was smooth now, as if nothing had happened. The world had already begun to forget. She turned to him, voice hoarse. "What did that message mean?" "Phase 2 initiated. What's Phase 2?" Luke rubbed his thumb against the edge of the flash drive, the silver casing dull under the weak light. I don't know yet, but I think Ethan did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Ethan's ring, the one Clara had buried with him. Found this in the cabin before the shooting started, he said quietly. It's not just a ring. Clara blinked. What are you talking about? He twisted the band gently, and it came apart into two halves, revealing a hidden chip inside. A data chip. Ethan left more than we thought. They drove north along the river, away from Savannah, away from the roads anyone could trace. By noon they reached an abandoned marina near Port Wentworth, a maze of rusted boats and broken docks. Luke parked under a half-collapsed awning. The smell of salt and oil filled the air as he set up the laptop on the truck's tailgate. The moment he inserted the chip, the screen came alive. A single file blinked open. Project Silver River, Final Directive. Clara's breath caught at the name. Ethan had called the night of his proposal the Silver River Sky. Luke clicked the file. Lines of text filled the screen. Emails, blueprints, government seals. Clara leaned closer, her pulse hammering. What is this? She whispered. Luke scrolled slowly. It's not just about real estate. He exhaled sharply. It's about military land. The file detailed a secret bid by Haverly Dynamics to purchase abandoned U.S. Army property along the coast, land contaminated by decades of chemical testing. They'd buried the reports, bribed officials, and falsified environmental assessments. The cleanup money had been redirected, laundered through development deals signed by Richard Hale and Lucien Mercer. And Ethan had found everything. Clara's hands trembled as she read the words. He tried to expose them. Luke nodded, and they silenced him. But if this goes public, she began, it'll take down half the state. He looked at her, eyes shadowed. That's why they won't stop until this disappears. The screen flickered suddenly, an incoming connection. Luke's hand froze over the keyboard. A message appeared in a simple black window. We see you. Then another. Come to where it began. Sunset. Alone. Beneath it an address, Ethan's crash site. The laptop shut itself off. By evening the storm had returned. Heavy rain swept across the highway as the truck climbed the ridge leading to the old Tulane Bridge, where Ethan's car had burned a year ago. The twisted guardrail still bore the black marks from that night. Clara stepped out into the downpour, her hair plastered to her face. The headlights of the truck cast long, trembling shadows across the asphalt. Luke followed, pistol at his side. Stay behind me, he murmured. But as the thunder rolled, a pair of headlights appeared from the opposite end of the bridge. A black sedan crept closer, its tires hissing on the wet pavement. The driver's door opened, and from the rain stepped a man Clara had never seen before. Mid-50s, sharply dressed, calm. The kind of calm that meant control. Luke stiffened. You. The man smiled faintly. Luke Mercer. Just like your father. Always making a mess. Who are you? Clara demanded. Haverly, he said simply. The name on every document your fiancé thought he could weaponize. He gestured toward the flash drive in Luke's hand. That doesn't belong to you. Luke's jaw tightened. Ethan died for this. We're not giving it up. Mr. Haverly took a step forward, the rain soaking through his suit. Ethan Hale was reckless, but bright. He found something even I didn't expect him to. Something buried in the Silver River files. That's what Phase 2 is about. Clara's heart pounded. What did he find? Haverly's gaze flicked between them, a faint smile on his lips. He found proof that the contaminated land wasn't abandoned. It's still active, still being used. Not by the military, by a private defense contractor. Luke frowned. You mean? I mean, Haverly said. There are still experiments happening there. Chemical tests. Civilian casualties. We've spent millions keeping it quiet. Ethan wanted to tell the world. And you killed him for it. Haverly's expression didn't change. He was going to ruin everything. Sometimes one death saves thousands. The wind howled through the bridge, rattling the loose pieces of guardrail. Luke raised the pistol. You're done talking. Haverly looked at him, almost pitying. You think this ends with me? You're a soldier, Mercer. You should know better. There's always another command. Clara stepped forward, trembling but defiant. Maybe. But this time, the truth doesn't die with you. She pulled the flash drive from her pocket and tossed it into the air, straight into the open water below. Haverly's eyes widened. What have you done? Set it free, she said. Ethan made 2 copies, and one's already on a cloud server, scheduled to go public at midnight. Haverly's calm cracked for the first time. You're lying. Try me. For a second, no one moved. The rain hissed. The air vibrated with tension. Then Haverly lunged forward, reaching for his gun. Luke fired first. The shot echoed across the bridge, sharp and final. Haverly stumbled back, collapsing against the guardrail. His body slipped over the edge, vanishing into the dark river below. Silence. Only the storm remained. Clara stood shaking, breath ragged, the taste of rain and fear in her mouth. Luke lowered the gun slowly. It's over. But even as he said it, the distant wail of sirens rose from the valley below. Police lights flickered faintly in the distance, climbing the road toward them. Clara turned to him. They'll blame us again. He nodded. Probably. Then what do we do? He looked at her for a long moment, long enough for lightning to split the sky and reveal the weariness in his eyes. We run, he said, until the truth runs faster. She wanted to argue, to tell him she was done running. But she saw it too, the inevitability of what was coming. The flash drive, the files, the death of 2 powerful men. It would all spiral beyond their control. And yet, in that chaos, something inside her had shifted. She reached for him. For the first time since Ethan's death, her touch wasn't made of fear. I don't know what's next, she whispered, but I'm not leaving you. Luke's hand closed around hers, rain slipping between their fingers. Then we'll face it together. They climbed into the truck as the first police lights curved over the bridge. The road ahead was black and endless, the storm still raging. Behind them, the Silver River swallowed every trace of what had happened, every secret, every betrayal. Hours later, miles from Savannah, Clara sat beside a dying fire in an abandoned rest stop, Luke asleep against the wall. The laptop was open in front of her. The clock hit midnight. A single notification appeared on the screen. Upload complete. Public release successful. Clara let out a shaky breath. It was done. Ethan's truth was free. But as she closed the laptop, the faint glow reflected a movement behind her, something on the wall, small and red. A blinking light. A hidden camera. Clara froze. Somewhere deep in the device, a new message appeared, unprompted, glowing like a wound across the dark screen. Phase 3, asset acquired. She turned to Luke, still asleep, his hand twitching, his breath uneven. Her pulse stuttered. She moved closer, gently pulling back the torn edge of his shirt. Beneath his skin, near his shoulder, something metallic glinted under the light, no larger than a grain of rice, embedded deep. Not a bullet fragment, a tracking implant. Clara's heart stopped. Ethan hadn't just been protecting her from his enemies. He'd been protecting her from Luke. And as she stepped back, the sound of distant helicopters began to fill the sky.